are not doing well under President Trump's tariffs, most especially soybean farmers.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today, as usual. Anyway, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. First in the house, Michael Rudner from Brooklyn, New York. You guys hear me say that all the time. Michael's clock is set at 3 o'clock. And if I am 5 seconds too late, he knows it. Welcome aboard, Michael from Brooklyn, New York. We also have in the house Paul Fleming from Powder Springs, Georgia. We also have in the house Breach MCP is in the house. How you doing, Breach? I haven't seen you in a while. Thank you for being here, beautiful. We also have in the house Yvette Avery Herod from Atlanta, Georgia. How you doing, beautiful, as well. Lee Grant from Montgomery County. Yvette is from Atlanta, Georgia. Breach is from Binghamton, New York. Lee the Bearcat from Austin, Texas. And we have as well Twitch starts up faster than Facebook. 30 seconds. I didn't know that. E2247 is in the house to keep me straight. Make sure I do the right thing by Palestine. Thank you, my brother, for being here. On the chat from Substack, which is behind, of course, we have John Davis. John A. Davis, I think you're from Minnesota, right, John? We have Kathy Tracy, Alex Avila, Dale, Janie A. Youngback, Karen, Maggie Neal, Jandy Ware, William Thompson, Susan Norrell, Michael Peter Kane, Marion Dixon, Barbara Fatante, or beautiful Barbara from Austin, Texas, John Sirius, Florence Rhodes, Richard Sylvester says, keep the faith and go easy, everybody, and thank you for the show. Thank you so kindly for being here. Richard Sylvester, J. Scott Wern Jr., welcome aboard. Elaine White, welcome. We got a lot to talk about. Of course, the shutdown is on, but beforehand, I want to just give a positive affirmation. I just got interviewed by another station in the Pacifica Network a few minutes before I did this show. Well, actually about an hour and a half before the show, because I had to get a whole lot of videos together for this. And one of the messages that I gave there, and I'll see if she sends me the MP4 of the interview, I'll try to play that tomorrow. But one of the things that I like to get across is the following. A lot of people feel like they're in despair. They feel worn down. They feel as if the things are out of control. Let me tell you something. They are not out of control. We have an inept being for president. We have a lot of inept people in cabinet positions. I mean, I think by having this ineptitude running our government, what I think it shows us is that DEI actually did work. Because when we had DEI to ensure that we got competent women, competent people of every stripe, we knew that we were getting competence. As they've eliminated DEI, it was almost eliminating competence, because now we have a president that is just that, incompetent. And not only incompetent, but we have him who has hired an incompetent yes person staff. Yes, we're going to discuss the value of the shutdown. I'm going to do that, but beforehand, let me just welcome El Senor, our 4-star General McCaffrey, because he said it right as relative to what occurred yesterday. And I think it hearing from a 4-star general, somebody that we that protected us, I think it's worth a listen to. So check this out. 4-star General Barry McCaffrey wasn't too kind with Donald Trump after his speech. He gave minor kudos to what Hegseth did, But in effect, he showed his disregard for Hegseth, but he let it fly on Donald Trump, justifiably so. He even called Donald Trump the S word. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
When you saw those 800 military leaders in that room, it reminds me of Douglas MacArthur's speech, duty, honor, courage, and a ghost, 1,000 ghosts rising from white crosses. There's just the spirit of duty, honor, country in that room. And they're not going to betray the oath they gave to the Constitution for a politician, are they? I mean, there's hundreds of years of tradition that they are bound by.
Well, look, I've been doing this a long time. That presentation at Quantico from the President and the Secretary of Defense is one of the most bizarre, unsettling events I've ever encountered. The president sounded incoherent, exhausted, rabidly partisan, at times stupid, meandering, couldn't hold a thought together. That audience is an apolitical institution. They will be respectful and follow all legal orders willingly. And by the way, it was not just the generals, it was the senior enlisted advisors for all those commands. They hold the culture of the armed forces in their hands. And then the Secretary of Defense gave a Rambo presentation, at times pretty good, whiskers, shaving, physical fitness, a first sergeant's talk at Reveille, not bad. But at other times, he's basically calling into question whether minorities and women were DEI or were they promotions based on merit. Nothing could be farther from the truth. And by the way, the group he was talking to have been in combat for 20 years. Their sons and daughters served. A bunch of them got killed and maimed. It was a highly inappropriate use of the armed forces, never mind the unsettling things about using military force in American cities. A very strange day in American life.
You might ask, why even bring this up? Well, look, it is important for us to understand what type of president we have. Not for those who already know who he is, but for those who at least have respect for former generals, etc., to see what they really feel about the president. You know, they don't quite criticize the presidents offhand. If they tell you a president is the S word, to put it bluntly, stupid, then more than likely the president is that, just at a higher exponent. Absolutely so. Anyway, folks, before I go, Michael Rudnin has some good articles that he posted, but we're covering them in this, so I won't read them. Please go ahead and you guys get to the link that he points out in those items there. Anyway, let me tell you something else that's important. So far, even from Chuck Schumer, I am marginally satisfied with how he handled his interview this morning. Because as it turns out, they spoke in better terms. But before we get there, I want folks that are all talking about the shutdown to let it be known that this shutdown is one of those, more so than many others, sort of an existential one. I don't know if you have received your notice yet, but Americans will be receiving notices from yesterday going forward of what their new bills are going to be for healthcare. So be prepared. As these people complain about it, you're going to have mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and daughters, etc., telling you about, can you believe what happened to my healthcare? And even as you are well read, you keep up with what's going on. Most Americans don't. And most Americans like to love Trump or like to not love Trump. But many of them don't exactly know exactly what's going on. So let me ask you so kindly, as you hear your friends, etc., complain about the prices of healthcare, let them know that this was a direct result of what Republicans did in Congress under the direction of the president. As you see those prices in the stores go up, let them know that it was a direct result of his immigration policy and the fear that he's putting into folks that are cosechando, that are picking the crops. Let them know that. Every time you hear a complaint, tie the complaint directly to Donald Trump's policy, because that is exactly where it belongs. The price of drugs that they go buy. If you notice what Donald Trump did today again, anybody know what he did today? The fear got to him, and Pfizer, he removed that triple-digit tariff. You see, he was loving the amount of tariffs he was getting. But now he's starting to be concerned. Well, it's not really him being concerned, right? It's the people who are running his stuff that are being concerned. All right, so let's see what we got here. I think Bruce says should discuss the value of shutdown for the Democrats. What are the values? I think it's not in anyone's value. I think you mean in anyone's interest. Let me ask you this. Let's say for once that Democrats don't shut down, because I spoke to Jenna at WBAI yesterday, and I didn't know what to say about the shutdown. I'm on both sides of the issue. Could Democrats get blamed? Yes. Should they just coalesce and say let it happen? Well, let me give you the two parts of the arguments. Let's say Democrats went ahead and said, well, let the Americans feel the pain from not having the subsidies and from having the health care go up without any government support. And when they go campaign, Republicans would twist that into saying, if Democrats thought this was so bad, why did they pass the CR? Why did they do X, Y, and Z? They are just as blamed for this as we are. They didn't fight for it. But then if they fight for it and don't get it, at least they can campaign and say, remember, we fought for it and this is what you voted for. We fought for it. We were unsuccessful. You want it solved? Elect us. But I think something else is likely to happen. I think that the actual shutdown coinciding with people receiving their health care bills may actually force the hands of Republicans to make the change or make some change. And if they make some change, that will actually put some sort of a benevolence towards Republicans, maybe. I don't know. But one thing I know is that I think I have come down on the side of we had to have the shutdown, because 2 out of 3, I think it works out in favor of the good guys. In other words, it works out at least by saying we are fighting for you. And the third, I think it's up for grabs, meaning, so if the Republicans go ahead and say, okay, we give, will that then allow Republicans to come back home? Maybe. I don't know. Later on in the show, I'm going to show you a piece from Farmers. But before I show you the piece from Farmers, let's go ahead and listen to how AOC brought technocracy in speech down to how people really speak and how to really reach people. AOC and the younger Democrats, the Democrats that are not affiliated with the neoliberals, that's the future of the Democratic Party, and that's the future of America that could actually win elections that actually serves us all. In other words, that actually turn around this slide. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side. Chris Hayes recently interviewed Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. And this interview showed two important things. One, it showed why we need young voices. It shows why we need assertive voices, knowledgeable voices, progressive voices in the Democratic Party. Why it is essential. But number two, it also shows that we need to have people who can actually listen to the questions that are being asked by the mainstream media, whether they're good ones or good hosts or not. In this case, she was interviewed by Chris Hayes, a very good host, but a very technocratic host. And I love what Ocasio-Cortez did here. What she did is she broke down a complicated concept that is very real, what Chris Hayes was speaking about, tax credits, etc. But most Americans don't understand those things. And she put it in everyday language, why it is that the government is shut down, why it is that Democrats are fighting for this particular issue. Listen to this conversation. It's a snippet of the conversation. It's important, but it also shows how Democrats and progressives should answer questions. Answer the specific question, but also put it into a form that addresses what people looking for bread, butter, and sustainability are looking for. She did a great job. Listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Right now, there's this sort of back and forth about the ACA tax credits. And there's kind of a strange dynamic that I want to get your sense of, right? Because at one level, negotiating over the ACA tax credits is important. I mean, there are people who are going to see their premiums go up 15, 20%, like huge amounts are going to spike. Republicans don't like these extenders. Democrats do. They think it's good for people. But that's fully in the lane of like normal politics. And then at the same time, like the president of the United States assembled 800 military commanders to say, I want you're going to have to go to war against your fellow citizens in American cities. And I think people are having a little bit of a hard time of like, we're going to have a fight on the shutdown about the tax credits, but not about the president wants to declare war on Americans, even though I understand those two are conceptually distinct. Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, Chris, but I think that's something for us to really set the record straight here on. This is not a fight over this is a fight over your ability to go to a pharmacy and afford your insulin. We're not talking about just 15 or 20% increases in people's premiums. Tomorrow, healthcare companies and today, healthcare companies are finalizing the premiums that everyday Americans are going to be paying. And we are talking about a doubling of monthly healthcare premiums, not even including your deductible, in terms of what people are going to be paying next year because of $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts that were put together earlier this year. And I don't know about anybody else, but I do not think that this is just about a tax break or a small tax extender. This is about fighting not just on tax breaks, community health centers, and ensuring that we have a stability of the American healthcare system. And when Republicans use a legislative mechanism to gut the American healthcare system, we have to use a legislative mechanism in order to restore it and to fight for it. Because at the end of the day, people may talk about tax credits this and tax credits that. What they do understand is when you have insulin and you can't afford it. What they do understand is when your kid has chemotherapy or your spouse gets diagnosed with cancer and you go into a hospital and it doesn't get covered. And you have to choose life and death, what this is about. Now, that does not mean that we ignore the abhorrent violation of law and norms and what is happening with our U.S. cities. But we have a broad spectrum of ways and places that we can fight, including our governors, our attorney generals, and our state and municipal leaders, as you just saw.
So I just want to make sure I understand this just from your perspective here. So, and I think this is generally the view of congressional leadership as well. You can correct me if I'm wrong. If there was bipartisan compromise, right? If everyone came together, the leaders of the parties, the president, and said, yes, these 5 things, we're going to make sure that these premium supports keep going. We're going to fund community health centers, whatever the sort of asks on appropriation around people's affordable health care. If those were met, Democrats would be a yes. Like, that is the box that this is happening in, as opposed to we can't fund a Department of Justice that prosecutes political enemies or whatever else might be out there.
Well, let me tell you, Chris, the mechanism by which that deal is locked is not just about agreeing in concept on tax credits. We need to do it with no tricks, no games, and no backdoors, which includes rescissions. And when we talk about rescissions,
right,
that is the mechanism that the federal government is using to gut and destroy rule of law across the board. So we are fighting to ensure that healthcare is protected for every American. But the way that we do that also means that the only way that you guarantee that is by forcing them to adhere to the rule of law, which means eliminating the rescission loopholes that they put in the CR earlier this year, which the Senate unfortunately had caved on then, and we're ensuring that doesn't happen now.
Yeah, the quick 10-second version for people that haven't followed this is that, you need 60 votes to get the filibuster to appropriate funds for the government, but they can pass a rescission, which is to claw back some of the money already agreed to by 50 votes. So they have this kind of like cake and eat it too model where it's like, oh yeah, we'll come together, we'll pass a bipartisan appropriations bill, and then when we've done that, then we'll go and get rid of the stuff we don't like, which just seems like an insane way to negotiate.
It's no way to negotiate. And again, we don't even have to get into the technicalities of this. But what is important to understand is that the way that you honor an agreement and the way that we honor our fight for healthcare and to define and to also protect everyday Americans' ability to afford their healthcare, to cover their kids, to defend Medicaid, those are the same mechanisms that we use to defend our rule of law, to defend the federal workers that we are trying to protect in this shutdown. Donald Trump is trying to play this bluffing game of, well, maybe what we're going to do is hold all the federal workforce hostage and fire everybody. Donald Trump has been firing everybody. We saw this with DOJ. We've seen this at the State Department. We've seen this at the Department of Justice. They are firing everybody. They are completely eliminating the federal workforce. And in order for us to stop this madness, we have to put a stop to it, and we have to stop enabling their abuse of power, including their use of rescissions. And when we're fighting on their health care, it forces them to act in ways in accordance with the law in other ways too.
In my opinion, I think AOC knocked it out of the park. A few sessions ago, I kept on saying, let's stop talking about food insecurity and start talking about Americans starving and being hungry. That is what the people that are starving and hungry realize. And if you're fighting for them and you want them to vote for you, you have to have them understand what they're voting for you for. They're not voting for you to solve, as far as they're concerned, food, that nebulous word, food insecurity. They're fighting for you to stop them from starving, to solve their hunger. The government shutdown isn't occurring because of tax credits to billionaires. Of course, that's the underpinnings. It is being shut down because you will die if you don't have the health care that you can get. If you lose your health care, if you have no subsidies for health care, you will likely lose your health care. If you lose your health care, you have a higher possibility of what? Dying. So speak English for the people to understand. And that is what Ocasio-Cortez did. She never not answered the question. She answered the question for both domains, both the bread and butter folk and for the technocrats. And that is what we better learn to do. The Republicans always speak at a 3rd or 4th grade level. And say, drill, baby, drill. Drill, baby, drill. MAGA. Trans. Girl or boys. Boys or girls. They speak in these very immature-ish, childish terms. But the thing about it is, it's the least common denominator. Therefore, people that would say we don't want men who are, or we don't want women who are boys, they understand that. But once they and somebody says gender nubilosity is something we support, people who want to be technocratic understand that as well. And that is what Democrats need to learn how to do. Progressives need to learn how to do that. We don't need these fancy terms all of the time. When we are in conference, when I go to my conferences with Netroots, or I go to my conferences with Move to Amend, or these other guys, Democracy Convention or whatever, to make things easier, sometimes we want to use those technocratic words, right? Because again, I can use one word to define an entire sentence. But when we're talking to the masses, let's talk English. Let's speak English. People are starving. People are poor. People are losing their homes. They're not home insecure or on, we like to say things now like they're unhoused. Yeah, I got corrected in many a liberal space. We don't like to use homeless anymore. We want to use unhoused. Okay. When I go into the street and see somebody, do I say, "Hey, Mr. Unhoused, are you unhoused?" No, the damn person is homeless. And they know it, and they'll tell you that too. No, I'm homeless. If you doubt me, you go into anywhere where you have, let's say, somebody that is homeless. Man, I'm homeless. What is that unhoused thing? We have to start doing things in a manner that people understand what we're saying. Anyhow, so by the way, folks, let's see what Michael Rudnin is. X all the Y. I like that. That is cute. Michael says, it reminds me of this. Let me put that up on the screen, Michael. It reminds me of this. X all the Y. Exactly, right? Exactly. Anyhow, folks, we have another video, but before we get to the other video, let me see if anybody wants to call in and make, to comment about anything that we've discussed so far. The telephone number is 281. Let me put it there. That's not to be answered. It says spam call. I like to have those spam filters on my phone now. They work like a champ. Okay. If you want to call in right now, you can call in directly at 281-823-7747, and I'm throwing that into the chat. 281-823-7747. If you'd like to add something before I go to the last video, the number is again 281-823-7747. John, come on in. How you doing, John?
I'm doing fine. This morning, I guess I couldn't be heard, so I don't know how much was heard, and it's not exactly on topic here, but Jeff was, talking about all of the immigrants taking jobs, or the illegals, but why would you vote for somebody who hired illegals themselves to build a building in New York City called Trump Tower and take down another one, Bonwit Teller department store building? I mean, it is rather humorous, too, because the way that they could tell was they were taking down a building and they had no hard hats on. So I think OSHA questioned, well, what are all those people doing there? And this was typical of Donald Trump, of exploiting vulnerable people. He bought off their silence, so we hardly ever heard anything about it. But David K. Johnston covered it. Wayne Barrett covered it. So, I mean, this is the history of Donald Trump should be presented to a lot of people who undyingly, they support him and worship him, and yet he is undermining them every step of the way. So
let me just say this. John, let me say this, okay? I thought by telling people how bad Donald Trump is and what he's done to them, that would have them cool off from him. But the cultish nature of the followers of Donald Trump is deeper than that. You are deep. You can think, etc. They don't care about that, right? What I've learned, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I've learned is the following.
Yeah.
If you notice the conversation that I had with Jeff, and by the way, I'm cutting out 2 of those conversations, both with Jeff and with Gil. I remember that Gil also had a good conversation with us this morning. But the reason I'm going to show that is, notice by the end of the conversation, both of those callers were pretty much in agreement with a lot of what I was saying, which proves the point that the only way these guys maintain where they are at, if you talk about Donald Trump lying all of the times, a continuum of lies, they have to do that, because when the truth comes out, and I'm not only talking about the personal truth of Donald Trump, but of policy, they'll forgive Donald Trump for about anything, because they look at Donald Trump as the person who is there to save them. He is a person who's there. These are scared people who believe somebody is taking away a birthright that they never had. And when they realize that, that is the way to get to them. I want you to, I'm going to do that conversation that I had with Gil again. Gil is not a bad person at all. Notice what happened when he started to realize, oh my God, I didn't realize that. And that is how you get to them. It's not about, I will continuously call Donald Trump a liar, but I don't expect pointing out his lies to change people who love him and to change their opinions. What I intend to change your opinion, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, though, I don't think that people are aware, because the media has never made them aware of what his history was. They just looked at him as a credible candidate and, go for it. They didn't go into any of that. All of that information that I have about Donald Trump came from Amy Goodman, and I listen to her religiously.
I love Amy.
And so when people find out the truth and then continue, it's an interesting problem, because I've seen documentaries on Mussolini fans who, most of them are gone now, but this was a while ago, where they loved him. And a lot of Germans, too, still liked
and that's,
Hitler.
You're making my point, though, John. You're making my point, and that's the important thing right there, right? The thing is not to get them to first of all, you're so right that the media didn't take care of Trump in the beginning. Let me give you 2 examples. Trump got popular by talking about by being a part of the birther movement. And the birther movement was a silly movement in that once you accepted that Obama's mother was an American citizen, it didn't matter where Obama was born, whether Hawaii, Thailand, Nairobi, it didn't matter. He was a natural born citizen by definition. Yeah. So the media allowed a false story because of their ineptitude. And they made a lot of those mistakes throughout, not mistakes, they made a lot of those doings throughout the entire Trump, and they gave Trump traction. Now, once people have a vested interest in a person, and they've bought hats and they've bought clothes and they've painted their driveways and all of that, it is hard to get them to move off of that. And so they'll twist themselves into pretzels to defend them. But where you can get to them is when the policies that he put out starts to kill their people. That is where you make headway. Right. And that's where we have to go now. But anyway, thank you for your call, my dear brother John.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Take care. All right, folks. Let's see. Anybody else has anything to say? I got one more video to go. Let's see. Michael says, pardon. Gonna put both my last comments together. Egberto, after the chat with John, a rant, please read out. Eric throwing regurgitated crap in the chat. that one's talking points straight out of right-wing bubble. Sure, you can help one or two, but there's a million more systemic problems requiring systemic solutions. Eric doesn't want to understand because it's always Republicans who stand against those systemic solutions. Republicans don't believe in the government providing for the general welfare. To the conservatives and Republicans, homeless people are a prop to push other narratives. Same goes for veterans. I don't know, Michael, if you don't understand that Eric is a, what is the word that I want to use for Eric? Eric chooses, willful ignorance is something that you can't fight against. I don't bother with that at all. Willful ignorance is not worth the effort. Don't let it get under your skin. The only time I will repeat one of Eric's right-wing crap is when it is something that I believe people need to hear because it's a narrative that's going around or so. Beth Andrews says his hardcore supporters do not care about his past. They have thoroughly taken him as themselves. Any insult against him is an insult against them, which is true, right? Because these are weak people, very weak people. There are two groups of people that follow Donald Trump. Most of them are very, very weak people. But there's also the set that uses him because his stupidity and the things that he does is profitable for them. And, screw everybody else. Anyway, the last video that I want you to hear has to do with our brothers, our farmers. As you know the soybean story, Donald Trump with these taxes that are the taxes that he placed on all Americans with the tariffs, it has really hurt farmers, and many in the administration are starting to find that out. Farmers that voted for him starting to find that out, and some of them remain die-hard Trump supporters, but also some of them realize, you know what, I have lost it all. And they realize that their farms are going to have to be sold. Their farms are no longer viable. I want you to listen to this and take it on the other side. I'd love to hear your commentary on it as well.
Farmers are not doing well under President Trump's tariffs, most especially soybean farmers. The quote, collateral damage, as Politico puts it, in the president's trade war with China. Since May, China has not purchased a single U.S. soybean, not a one, according to the American Soybean Association, turning instead to Brazil and Argentina. That last country there, one that the Trump administration decided to send a $25 million aid package, a bailout that could be backfiring, according to Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins. You just heard what she says to reporters in public. Well, here's what she says in private to other officials. She sent a text message to the Treasury Secretary last week while he was at the UN. Here is a picture of it. The message, photographed by the AP, showed Rollins worrying to Bessent, saying, quote, we bailed out Argentina yesterday, and in return, the Argentines removed their export tariffs on grains, reducing their price, and sold a bunch of soybeans to China at a time when we would normally be selling to China, adding, this gives China more leverage on us. Joining us now, Arkansas soybean farmer Scott Brown. Scott, good to have you back. Like to see you on that combine.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
All right. So I thought it was interesting seeing what Brooke Rollins said to reporters there at the White House and the way that she spoke to the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. Why might she be so worried about the soybean market?
Well, like we talked earlier, we went from 12 billion to zero. And then, as a farmer, we get up one morning and you give Argentina, which is our second biggest competition in the world. They're the largest exporters of soybean meal in the world. So I get up one morning, I turn the news on, and you give $20 billion of taxpayer money to my competition. And then the Chinese buy, I think the figure is 30 or 40 containers, ships, which is about 65,000 metric tons per ship, which is like 2.2 million bushels. So they buy $12 or $14 billion worth of soybeans from the Argentinians after the tax holiday. And here's the caveat to it. They give $2.30 over the November board, while I'm getting 50 cents under the November board. So that makes the Argentinian soybeans about $12.42 a bushel. I think that's the real figure they gave. So all my premium, they all went to Argentina.
Yeah. All right. She says that don't worry. It's a time of uncertainty, Brooke Wallens does. Hang on. Relief is just around the corner. What would that relief be? Do you see it coming?
I don't know. I mean, how do you give me relief through the CCC with the government shutdown? We were going to plant canola this month. It's one of the few things we've found. It's moved into Arkansas. They're going to make renewable jet fuel and renewable diesel out of it. We've never raised any. I had to get a loan from FSA to do it because it's an uninsurable crop through the federal crop insurance. But they would let me do it through the NAP insurance. Well, I can't even get the loan for it because there's nobody at the FSA office. There's nobody at the NRCS office. We shut the government down. They all went home.
I'm laughing because it sounds ridiculous. What do you do then? What do you do? You're a soybean farmer. Last time I talked to you, you said you believe you're going to break even. Are you still on track to break even?
I don't know. I've lost 10% of market share since we talked last. I've lost another $12 an acre for the difference in the market when we talked last to where I'm at today.
That was like a month ago.
Every day. Yeah. Lost another $12 an acre since then on 500 acres.
How are your other farmers, for your friends, feeling? I know a lot of them are Trump supporters. Do they still feel good?
Everybody's pretty nervous. Everybody's pretty scared. There's some of the older guys that, farm out of their pocket. They're like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not giving back 30 years worth of work. Everybody's scared to death. I got friends that are bankers that, will tell you the bank examiner is already telling them, look, you're going to have to deal with these guys because their equipment's not going to be worth as much. Their land's not going to be worth as much. I mean, this is exactly like the movie from the 80s with Sam Shepard and Jessica Lange Country. That's what's going to go down.
Scott, but Scott, meet Senator Tester.
Hello, Sue. I talked to your office several times when me and you was beating the drum pretty hard trying to get the Livestock Transparency Act passed. Thank you for everything you've done for us.
It would have been the right thing to do, and it's still the right thing to do. I want to just say something, Katie. There are thousands of farmers just like Scott out there. And the reason they're in the situation they are is because of bad political decisions. Markets have gone away. Input costs have gone up. And there's farmers in Montana, just like there are in Arkansas, that are wondering how they're going to stay in business. And bankers are looking at them going, can I afford to continue to loan these folks money? This is crazy. And to get bailed out by the CCC again is the last thing the farmers want. They want these markets to work. And these tariffs have destroyed the markets for farmers across the board. Family farmers. It's going to create more consolidation, and it's going to raise hell with their food security in this country if something doesn't change.
Scott, one quick question to you about the president. He put out a message on Truth Social last hour saying that he's going to be meeting with President Xi of China and that he will discuss soybeans. Do you put much stock in that? Does that make you feel better?
I mean, what good's it going to do to discuss soybeans at almost November? Because Senator Tester can correct me if I'm wrong here, but in November, the Brazilians will start cutting. They'll be in full swing by December. They don't need us. I mean, you're going to wait to have a discussion over selling soybeans when Brazil's in full bore? What bargaining power are we going to have then?
And that's the deal. The farmers, Donald Trump, your Führer, sold you out. In other words, the Brazilian got a $20 billion bailout. And the thanks that they gave to the United States is to reduce the prices of their soybeans, no tariffs on their soybeans, and China bought it all up. And the American farmer, via the auspices of their Führer, their president, are left holding the bag. And John, this is what I'm talking about. You have to connect the dots. Now, there are still farmers that are supporting Donald Trump because they believe they are going to just have short-term pain and that eventually their markets will come back. The thing about it is, why should their markets come back? Even if Donald Trump drops the tariffs on the farmers right now, he has lost his credibility because now he looks like a charlatan. In other words, he looks like somebody that can't be trusted. Today the tariff is this, tomorrow the tariff is that, the next day the tariff is this. Brazil and Argentina just says, okay, We are not going to have any tariffs. We are not going to have any export fees. We are going to... And why would they ever come back? So while the trick that the president is using to talk to these guys is that just wait a little bit. In effect, he's saying, I hope you guys can wait till after the 2026 election. Well, they are going to go through another cycle of cosechando, another cycle of harvest with no market. So likely they'll not plant, and likely what they'll get is a stipend. But I don't know if you guys heard a very important part of that story the farmer said. The farmer said bankers are starting to talk to the farmers, and they're telling them your equipment is going to continue to be worth less and your land less. You better make a deal now. Guess what that deal is, guys? Selling your land to agribusiness. Who's going to come in, take your land on the cheap, and then continue to profit from the lands that all these farmers once had. This didn't start in this cycle of Donald Trump's leadership. This started during his first run in 2016. You see, his then Secretary of Agriculture told them, the days of the small farmer is over. We're talking now about agribusiness. They've been told. They were told in 2016. I guess they didn't believe, or in the 2016 cycle, I guess they didn't believe it. Well, now it has come to pass on steroids. Well, let me just say, Mary, no more family farms, these substantive family farms. But you know who is going to fare pretty well, I think? Specialty farmers. Specialty farmers, I think, are going to do very well. And I see a lot of them on TikTok where they grow their chickens, cows, and plants, and they have these self-sustaining farms where they rotate the cows and the corn and all. They have this sort of a rotating thing, and they sell their food not necessarily to grocery stores but to specialty stores or on stands. So while the big farmers are likely to go out of style, I think the specialty farmers are now going to do very, very well. But again, the specialty farmers are not the ones that feed America in any huge manner. So what we're doing here is losing a lot. And what Donald Trump has done is he screwed the farmers once again. And I want to talk a little bit more to the farmers on some other issues. Right now, food prices are skyrocketing. If you go into your grocery store, even as Donald Trump speaks about, food prices have gone down, false. I go into the grocery stores rarely. But every time I go into the grocery stores now, I am shocked. I am completely shocked at the price of milk. I am shocked at the price of eggs. I am shocked at flour. I am shocked at all these things. But let me tell you what even pains me more. If it were that these prices were going up, to go ahead and pay farmers their worth. In other words, if farmers started to make more of this money for the reason the prices are going up, because these guys have been working a long time for a hard time. They've been voting wrong, but they work hard. They vote wrong, but they work hard. Let's not take away the work that they do. They work very hard. I wish a lot of these price increases were going to them. But you know what, people? They're not. By the way, Michael Radin, you have editor privileges on the Facebook, so you can get rid of the those spammers that are putting that crap in there if you want to. But anyway, it is important for us to understand that these farmers are being screwed, and they are not the ones that are getting the benefits of these higher prices. they get the benefit of the higher prices. Yes, you do, Michael. I did that. You check to make sure that you didn't get your invite for that, because I sent it a few days ago. So yeah, these farmers are not getting the benefits from these higher prices. Remember when I told you guys, and I'm going to hit capitalism again on this issue. When I told you that capitalism is unsustainable, this is a perfect example. Farmers don't get to raise their prices 7% every year, right? They don't get to raise eggs prices 7% every year. They don't get to raise the price of corn 7% every year. But an investor in the stock market, they expect their investment to grow faster than inflation, to grow faster than anything else, to grow at 7, 8, 10, 20%. That can only happen in a closed economic system, the world's closed economic system. That can only happen if they're getting 7%, somebody has to get below inflation on their growth. And that's exactly what capitalism does. A growth, that's exactly what happens. You can't have, let's give a good example. You buy corn futures. That is, remember I said that the bushel of corn and all of that, it's not it's not the farmer that gets the benefit from those rises, right? So as these guys profit from creating false scarcity of corn and soybeans and all these other products, they get these price rises in the paper that they buy on these products. So they're the ones making a killing for what you buy in the grocery stores, because the grocery store doesn't necessarily buy directly from the farmer, right? They buy from the market. And because it's a fraudulent market working on stocks and papers and futures and all of that sort of stuff, all this profit margins go to the wealthy. It's not a sustaining model, because as prices increases, they increase for oil, they increase for fertilizer, they increase for all these inputs. That's what you heard that Senator Tester talking about. They increase for every input that the farmer uses. But those inputs that the farmer uses, increase fertilizer, he cannot get that return on the products that he's selling, because he's bottom-balled by the people who are buying his product in bulk, because they control the market between different companies, between different states, etc. So they can make all kind of price adjustments. And if you notice, the other thing that the farmers fed, while Argentina can have above board $12.50, I am below board 50 cents. Who's doing that? It's the market. It's the market. And that's when I say the capitalist system is a bona fide fraud. That is what I mean. That is what I'm talking about. So folks, please pass these videos, these messages along, because very few people understand exactly how this system works. They just understand what folks on the outside try to tell you, but they don't have your best interest at hand. Their interest is to uneducate you. Their interest is to make you dumb, because if you're dumb, you don't ask the questions. You don't ask, why are the prices high and the farmers are still struggling? Why is the price of beef high and the cattle rancher is still suffering? Because ultimately they'll buy your farm and they'll start farming that. And if even that eventually won't work, because that again will ultimately fail as they exceed the differential between inflation and what investment needs to have. It's a flawed economic system, and the math tells you that. And if you really understand math, you would always come out on the same place. The capitalist system is a fraudulent system that depends on you making money on the demise of others, on the extraction of others. They have to be underwater for you to make the kind of returns that you depend on in the asset markets, in the capital markets. I mean, there are no two ways about it. And anybody who wants to confront me or discuss the math, I'll be more than happy to do so. Absolutely anyone who wants to discuss the math. It's just simple. And the funny thing about it, it's not even complicated math. None of this is complicated math. It is basic arithmetic. But we have been indoctrinated all of our lives. And we don't question it because we've been indoctrinated. All right, folks. This is a point in the program where I ask you to please support the program. So I want to ask you to please support the program by becoming paid subscribers. And how do you become a paid subscriber? You become a paid subscriber by going to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. And I'm putting that link in the chat right now. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter will get you to the link that gives you the option to subscribe and become a paid subscriber of our network. Those paid subscribers will get a chance to read every single one of my books free of charge. As you can see, I'm scrolling them on the screen. For Tribulations of an Afro-Latino Caribbean Man, Racism Didn't Stop My Smile, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. Also, How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It. As well as It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors. You get to read all of that as a subscriber to my the newsletter, Egberto Off the Record. That is what sustains us. That is what allows us to do all the postings, etc. that we're doing. I'm starting to get into some AI stuff that I'm paying for now as well to kind of help me out. Imagine hiring an AI thing to help with videos and all that kind of stuff right now. I'm learning some of the new stuff. So again, it costs. So I'm asking those of you who have the wherewithal to please consider becoming paid subscriber for our newsletter. Unlike many others, we work with you. You have contact with us. We answer you. We're not like the big cheeses that just decided after they were fired from the mainstream media to come on to Substack and build their and get folks to become paid subscribers, and you can't talk to them. They have a platform. We have a platform. You can reach me. You can talk to me. It's a promise that you will always be able to talk to me. I don't care how many people we get. We will always create an avenue for there to be communication with you. There are a lot of the big guys that are coming from network TV, bringing the same things that they had on network TV here. We think Substack ought to be different, where you have a relationship with the host, where you are a part of the program, as you can see, etc. Please tell me where you can, what you want, what you need, how you want things to run. So please consider again being a paid subscriber. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter is a link. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. I'm going to get out of here now. I want to thank you all for being here. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.